Hi everyone, welcome to Module 2, Introduction to the Endocrine System. So this is introducing a topic that we're going to be taking up again later in Physiology 2, which is going to be sort of a continuation for the endocrine system. But it's very interesting and it can get very complicated, so it's really essential. Make sure that you really understand the stuff that's covered in Introduction to the Endocrine System. And it'll get progressively harder, you'll see, as we go throughout the different topics. And it'll get challenging. It'll take probably 5 to 7 hours, I guess, to go through all of the material. But really make sure that you take your time with it and understand exactly what's happening. Right from the very beginning, don't assume anything is too simple for you to spend time on. Okay? So the 5 topics, as you've probably seen on the website, are Topic 1, hormones. Topic 2, the classification of hormones, so the different types. Topic 3, the control of hormone release. And again, this is going to be tied into the types of hormones. 4, hormone interactions. And then 5, or topic 5, is endocrine pathologies and hormone evolution. So take your time with the first 4 sections, and then when you get to the 5th one, the endocrine pathologies especially, they're very interesting, and they'll make a lot more sense if you've taken the time to go through all the other topics and really make sure that you understand them so that the pathologies and the symptoms resulting from them will make the most sense to you. Okay? You obviously have a quiz for this section too, and I think that's about everything that I want to say for that. So I'll go through the learning objectives for this section, and that way it'll emphasize the stuff that you should know, right? The stuff that you really have to make sure that you know. So the first thing is explain the 4 criteria that make a chemical signal a hormone. Okay? Then you want to be able to explain what the cellular mechanism of action of a hormone is. You also want to be able to list 3 chemical classes of hormones and to be able to give an example of each. You want to be able to compare endocrine cells' synthesis, storage, and release of peptide and steroid hormones. Okay, so these are very different. You've probably also realized that at some point they do sort of cross over and the line between them gets blurred, but you should know the hallmark signs or the hallmark features of each one, okay? And that way you can identify the exceptions as well. You should also be able to compare the location of hormone receptors and the cellular mechanisms of action of peptide and steroid hormones, so the differences between them, where the receptors are located, how that has an effect on their action. Compare the 3 main groups of amine hormones. Describe the role of the central nervous system in endocrine reflexes. Compare the structure and function of the anterior and posterior pituitaries. So this is, in addition to being an important part for the endocrine system, it's going to be very, very brief intro to the central nervous system. We're going to look at the pituitary again in the central nervous system, but because it's such an important endocrine structure, it's featuring first here. You also want to be able to list the 6 anterior pituitary hormones, the hormones that control their release, and their primary targets. You want to be able to compare long loop negative feedback for anterior pituitary hormones to the negative feedback loops for insulin and parathyroid hormone. You want to be able to explain permissiveness, synergism, and functional antagonism. So you should know all of these terms and be able to give examples of each. Name the 3 most common types of endocrine pathologies. Explain how negative feedback can be used to determine the location of a problem with 1 gland in a 2 or 3 gland pathway. Right? So you should understand how the negative feedback loop works, what its effects are on, so what its targets are on, and how you can use that to localize where let's say that you have a pathology in a certain gland, what gland that's localized to. And then finally, explain how comparative endocrinology is useful for understanding human physiology. Okay, so that's it. So there is a fair amount, like I said, of stuff here to cover in this section, but I do really believe that you're going to enjoy it, and it is very interesting. Take your time with it, make sure that you really understand it, and you get the most out of it. But this stuff will be coming up again and again and again, not only in physiology too, but I'm sure you'll encounter this in your careers because hormone-related pathologies are very common. Okay, so enjoy, and I will talk to you on Thursday.